Hello, I'm Maxine Woon. As with most teenagers in the early to mid-60s, I was interested in music, dance, and particularly the dance music of the day. As a result, I started collecting records I liked. In the early 60s, before I progressed to liking soul music, my musical preferences were the blues and Bob Dylan, and this is what I started to collect, albeit on a small scale. Artists like John Lee Hooker, Jimmy Reed, Muddy Waters, Memphis Slim, and also the British blues bands like John Mayall and the Blues Breakers, Alexis Corner's Blues Incorporated, and the Graham Bond Organisation. Even in the darkest reaches of Wales, between 1964 and 1968, I was able to see many of the British bands. I also collected, but never saw, Bob Dylan. It was a bit later, about 1964-65, when I would listen to my transistor radio under the bedclothes at night and hear the sounds of young black America being played on Radio Luxembourg, the pirate ships, and occasionally the BBC light radio during the daytime. This was when I heard for the first time the fantastic sounds of the Temptations, Four Tops, the Miracles and the like on Tamil and Motown, Aretha Franklin on Atlantic, Otis Redding on Vote, and Sam and Dave, plus many more on Stax Records. Having heard this wonderful music, I was confident I had found my true passion, which kick-started my record collecting in a more serious way. Alas, not that easy for me where I was living at the time, because there were no specialist shops to hand. By way of an anecdote, on a Saturday, if I left work early and got home before 1 o'clock, I would catch the end of the Jack Jackson radio show on the BBC Light programme. Jack always used to play a soul tune in the last 5 to 10 minutes of his show, and if I left work early and got home quick enough, I would hear one. On this particular occasion I did, and I was lucky enough to hear Willie T. Thank You, John. Willie T.'s real name being Wilson Turbenton, who was from New Orleans, and this record had been finally released on British Atlantic Records. I loved it so much I had to have a copy. As I mentioned earlier, it was never easy buying specialist records in my hometown, which was a little Welsh town called Aberystwyth. The only place I could buy any of my records was Boots the Chemist, and they needed to order them for me. This one was no exception. They didn't have it in stock. What seemed a long 3 weeks later, when my record finally arrived, I was even more thrilled that I was getting value for money on discovering yet another wonderful tune, Walking Up a One-Way Street on the B-side. At the time, Walking was being played in the clubs like the Twisted Wheel and the Golden Torch, just to name a few. It went on to be big on the northern soul scene some years later, and it is still played today. Yes, 2 truly wonderful pieces of soul music on a single slab of vinyl. The icing on the cake came in 2000, when the man himself signed it for me at the Cleethorpes Soul Weekender. Sadly, Willie T. passed away in 2007. He is gone. But some 53 years later, his music and my record collecting continues.